the start of the genesis of this whole situation is because I had an opinion that went against the narrative. And that's why I went to prison. And that's why, if I'm arrested again, I will die in prison. So I ask you, please, as many people as possible, the American State Department knows exactly who I am and the situation I'm currently involved in. And they know the fate that awaits me. They know it. You know, they have that saying that, I forget the wording exactly. You know, I'm a little stressed out, as you can imagine, but they have that saying that people are fundamentally good, but for evil to triumph, all you need is the indifference of good people. Please don't be indifferent to my fate. I ask you this very humbly. Please recognize that, well, the literal death that awaits me if this doesn't work out. Understand what's going on.
Hey guys, welcome to the Rescue Michigan weekly live stream. Sorry to start off on such a sour note, such a sad thing, but we have to talk about this. That was Gonzalo Lira predicting his own death, which came true this past weekend in a Ukrainian prison. Gonzalo Lira was an American citizen who committed no crime in Ukraine other than to criticize the Zelensky government, which does not, first of all, entitle any government to murder you to begin with. But secondly, the State Department was well aware of his case that had been going on for something like over a year by this point. That video that we just watched, that was when he had, I guess, cut off his tether and tried to flee to the Hungarian border, hoping to seek political asylum in Hungary, because the U.S. State Department, despite being completely aware of his case from start to finish, did absolutely nothing about it. His case has gotten some exposure, particularly since Tucker Carlson covered it not too long ago. But the mass media never talked about it. And because of that, an American citizen was killed by the Ukrainian government. Now, you got to think about this, folks, because that means, I mean, I guess we've already known this. The government of the United States will not protect you if you are a dissident. The State Department, which has an obligation to protect American lives overseas, didn't even exercise its power. And all I had to do was tell Ukraine free him, and they would have had to. So think about this, folks, because House Speaker Mike Johnson recently announced he was going to be moving forward that foreign aid package, including something like $100 billion for Ukraine. They kill our citizens with impunity, and Congress will give them money. Makes me sick, folks. And sooner or later, there will be a vote on that money. And you can bet we'll be watching to see what the Michigan delegation does, because I know not one single Michigan congressman has done anything to defend Gonzalo Lira. I believe Rand Paul did. I believe J.D. Vance did, and that was it. Nobody else did a thing. So remember that, folks. The government won't protect you. They won't protect you from anything. Jamie Thompson says, are you live on Rumble yet? Yes, I believe I am. We should be live on Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, and X, where I can see all your guys' comments. By the way, speaking of those platforms, we got over 1,000 subscribers on YouTube and on Rumble. So thank you guys for all of the likes and the comments and the shares. Those really do help the channel. So please don't hesitate to do so. Sorry, it's kind of a quiet stream tonight, guys. I almost always have a whole big panel of guests these days. It's been kind of a rare thing for it to just be me, but everyone either had conflicts or wasn't feeling well or something or other. So Just me tonight. Hopefully it'll be, I think it's going to be kind of a short stream, but we do have some more things to talk about, starting with, of course, the big LARPing incident that happened in Houghton Lake yesterday. And that's, of course, I'm talking about Kristina Karamo and a bunch of state committee members and non-committee members getting together, despite the fact that the meeting was canceled by the lawfully convened meeting on Saturday, January 6th. But we will talk about that in just a moment here. Jamie says, "Oh, it's on now. Thank you." You know what, Jamie? You reminded me. I actually need to have my Rumble window open so that I can see chats on Rumble. So sorry, folks, if you are watching on Rumble and you didn't see. Sovereign Mayor in Rumble says, "So inexcusable and so very, very heartbreaking." Talking about the Gonzalo Lira case. Absolutely, it is. Yeah, somebody asked me. We've been doing a lot of stuff about Kristina Karamo lately, and they make the point. Well, they and I've heard it expressed different ways from different people. I'll just say that, and there is, I think, a legitimate concern that sometimes the politics is kind of crowding out other things that we need to worry about. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of those other things tonight because that's not the case. First off, the legislature has been out of session for the past 2 months. In Michigan, they just came back last week. A couple of bills got introduced last week, very, very few, like 3 in the House and 7 in the Senate. They're relatively minor. No votes just yet, so we'll see. I did hear that there's apparently going to be a vote soon in the House on a bill to tax paint, which just giving us one more thing to attack the Democrats about. Taxing paint. Hey, thanks. If we needed more taxes, more fees. But as I said, not a lot of stuff has happened in the state House and Senate. In Washington, they've also been pretty quiet since there's a little bit going on the week after Christmas, but for the last few weeks, it's been pretty quiet. But one thing I do want to call people's attention to, and we are going to be doing a big push on this starting this week, and that is getting people signed up as poll workers. If you go to our website, this is our homepage, and just scroll down a little bit, there's a big action alert blob there, and here's the link to sign up for the Election Protection Team, which is being organized by the same team that did it 2 years ago. We recruited, I think, almost 500 poll workers for the 2022 elections, and we definitely need people to become poll workers, not poll challengers, poll workers. Poll workers have way more authority than poll challengers do. They actually get paid. And being a poll worker, you actually get to make the decision on whether or not procedures are being followed correctly or not. I mean, you can't sometimes like in Detroit, I saw a lot of illegal things happen because I was the only one. More or less, Carlos put a stop to it. But we made sure every single violation got recorded in that poll book. Fortunately, not enough came with it because there's people being distracted with all kinds of other things. Let's say something about the Dominion voting machines, you might recall. But at any rate, being an election worker really does give you some ability to do something about what's going on. And they typically hire people that they've had work the polls before. So they may have already hired all the poll workers for the presidential election that's coming up in just a month and a half, less than a month and a half from now. And yeah, Kelly Fountain on Facebook says, think about working the polls and the 9-day voting. Well, I don't think you automatically sign up for a 9-day contract. We will see. How each municipality does it, but I think we're going to see that most people are voting on election day or voting absentee, which doesn't change the whole system of early voting, just to make things more complicated, more easy to confuse people. So we'll see. I would say, and I've talked about this at my county level, the best way to vote is to vote absentee in person at the clerk's office. You don't have to have them mail you your ballot. You can fill out the application at your local clerk's office, your city or township clerk's office. You can give them the application. They give you the ballot right then and there. You fill it out right then and there. You give it back to them right then and there. That's the best way to vote. And get your absentee ballot in as early as humanly possible. And I've heard from a local clerk that they're going to have the ballots as soon as tomorrow, folks. Well, tomorrow's Martin Luther King Day, but as soon as Tuesday. Clay Coey on Facebook says, over under on how long this MIGOP mess will be in court. I think a couple of months, but I don't think much more than that. What's going to happen at this point is we went over in some previous streams some very, very hilarious responses from the Michigan GOP Trust and from Comerica Bank in response to Dan Hartman's ridiculous lawsuit against MIGOP, or against those two entities. And the funny thing is, soon enough, he's going to probably file a response to them. He doesn't actually have to because he's not the party counsel anymore, but he's keeping up appearances. So he's going to probably have to answer those motions, and that will be even funnier. But at some point, what's going to probably happen is probably this coming Saturday, the real party is going to elect a new chair, and then they're going to appoint a new council. And the council's going to file something with the court that says, notice, Dan Hartman has been removed. He is not counsel. He is now committing a fraud on this court, et cetera, et cetera. And that might end up being the venue for this whole thing. But my understanding also is there's going to be a lawsuit filed as well. We'll see what happens. In fact, we can probably even take a look at what that might look like. So let's see here. This is, by the way, this is the lawsuit that was filed by the Hillsdale County Republican Committee against various defendants. And this is kind of what you do when you are starting that you are, this was the disputation over who the real Hillsdale County Republican Party is. Now, I was looking up to see how this played out in court, and it appears, because we saw the other night, we might have seen there was this default judgment against Hillsdale. Here, let me switch to that. Hold on. Pull up the screen here. This was the contempt order against them at the end. I think we went over this in one of the recent live streams where subsequent to entering the judgment, the court ignored directing the defendants to show they should not be held in contempt. They ordered the Michigan Republican Party and its chairperson, Kristina Karamo, to show cause why they should not be held in contempt for their failure to comply with the declaratory judgment based on allegations that after receiving a copy of the declaratory judgment, the Michigan Republican Party continues to list these people as the chair of the county party. At the contempt trial, the plaintiffs called one witness, the current chairperson, introduced numerous exhibits. His testimony was unrebutted, as neither defendants Mosby, Smith, and Gritzmaker nor respondents Karamo and the Michigan Republican State Committee called any witnesses or offered any evidence. And this is why they got fined. And this is why the state committee members now all owe these people their attorney's fees, which reportedly is in the neighborhood of $50,000. A lot of money. Anyway, so I was looking through the complaint, and let me pull it up here. One sec. But as I understand, they got defaulted on this, which means they never actually answered this lawsuit, which is not a good thing to do. So apparently there wasn't really any legal proceeding. They just didn't answer the complaint, and it just got defaulted on the judgment. But nonetheless, knowing that, or not knowing how that was going to play out, this is the lawsuit that was filed. So we don't know exactly what's going to happen in the lawsuit against how they're going to lay out their argument, but it'd be probably something similar to this. So here's the story in brief in this complaint. We're not going to read this whole thing word for word, but first they just have some introductory stuff, the definition of a precinct delegate. And then at the primary, there was this process resulting in 87 Republican precinct delegates being elected in Hillsdale County. Now, it's not in this pleading because it doesn't need to be, and it's irrelevant, honestly. But my understanding is that what happened in Hillsdale was basically that the Hillsdale County America First people got screwed because they had one notary notarize all of their affidavits and didn't date it properly or something like that. And the clerk was opposed to them, so he or she's just said, these are invalid, and it's too late because the final deadline's already gone by, you're screwed. But, hey, you know what, life is rough, and that's what happened. And they didn't file suit to get that undone and say that, the lack of dating the notary was not their fault, that's a curable error, et cetera, et cetera. Whatever. So the defendants who were in the officers of the Hillsdale County Republican Party at the time of, remember, this is the beginning of the term of the precinct delegate. It starts in August of every 2 years and ends when the next primary occurs. The defendants who are not in support of a majority of these delegates face certain removal from power. attempted to thwart the will of the voters by concocting a process to disavow from the party those elected delegates with whom they disagreed, prohibiting them through the use of armed guards, no less, from fulfilling their statutory duties as precinct delegates. They held an illegal county convention that did not comply with the election law and the state and local governing documents of the Republican Party, and for which defendants have fully acknowledged that they did not follow the law. Because of these actions, a special meeting was properly called, held, and documented, whereby a majority of Hillsdale County Republican Party Executive Committee members voted to remove the defendants as officers of the party and replace them with the plaintiffs. Unfortunately, they refused to step down. Does that sound familiar? Worse yet, they brazenly committed in writing that they will continue to prohibit the duly elected delegates from attending and voting at the statutorily required November meeting to elect the executive committee and others. Defendants' attempts to stay in power by ignoring the law may be the type of behavior that is commonplace in developing nations where democracy and the rule of law are not followed, but is not tolerated in the United States and must be corrected here. So the party's jurisdiction and venue, yada, yada, yada. These definitions and things. And they're citing these bylaws. And the copy of the state party bylaws attaches Exhibit 1, Article 2 of the bylaws. So they're citing the bylaws very closely, consistent with the state party bylaws. The EC adopted bylaws contained in the party reference book, providing for the governance and procedure. Copies attached. Bylaws state the EC is the executive committee of the Hillsdale County Republican Party. And this goes on. And so, yeah, more explaining things. So there was these delegate members of the executive committee. This was in November 2020. So this is the old Hillsdale County Executive Committee, and there they are. And then there's also these statutory members. These are people who are on the executive committee because they are office holders. They are county commissioners, state representatives, state senators, county clerk, county treasurer, if those are from the party in question. So they have a given number of statutory members, and here they are. So you see Senator Shirkey, Representative Andrew Fink. These other folks, probably county commissioners, for the most part. So on about July 23rd, now think about the timing. This is after the filing deadline for the next cycle of precinct delegates. And they knew by this time that a lot of their members that had filed were disqualified. And it's before the August convention that actually elects the next round of precinct delegates. So it's before the upcoming county convention. So it says defendant John Smith emailed some but not all members of the committee and informed them of a special meeting to be held on July 28th. To the best of the committee's knowledge and belief, none of them identified in paragraph 30, that's statutory members, got a copy of the meeting. So despite not noticing to all members of the HCREC as required, defendants purport to hold a meeting on the 28th, in which they disavowed candidates for various offices, including precinct delegate, who are on the Republican ballot in the August primary election. The concept of disavowing candidates under the bylaws relates to the endorsements of individual candidates in primary elections, which I don't see what that would actually do. It says here, it's quoting the bylaws, the EC may endorse, support, or disavow an individual candidate in a contested Republican primary election, provided that a resolution to endorse or disavow a particular candidate be adopted by 2/3 of the voting members. So what? I mean, what does an endorsement mean? It means we support so-and-so. Okay, but what if so-and-so is uncontested? What's the difference? Is it disavowing? Sounds to me like it's a negative endorsement. We do not endorse that you vote for this person. Well, if the race is for precinct delegate, you can disavow them, but they're still going to win. So it goes on. The bylaws do not allow a subset of the committee to secretly and arbitrarily eject duly elected members or precinct delegates, but defendants did exactly that. They had an illegally convened meeting because they didn't notice their statutory members. Purporting to act on behalf of the Hillsdale County Republican Party, adopted resolutions suggesting that being disavowed meant that otherwise duly elected members would no longer be recognized as such. One such resolution, which the committee is informed and believes is representative of the resolution sent to other disavowed members, provides as follows. There's something missing here, so I don't know what it is. I'm sorry, you guys say you're getting feedback. I don't even have my monitor on. I don't even have my headset on. So I I don't know what could be causing that. Let me see. I don't even have my monitor. I mean, I fear that there's some kind of weird reverb setting on my mixing box that I'm not sure I'll be able to turn off, and I don't think it would be a good idea to mess with that right now. Let me know in the chat, guys. Is this really impossible to hear me? Because if so, maybe I will call it a stream and we'll just have to pick up where we left off tomorrow. Let me know in the chat, guys. 'Cause if it's just reverb, that might be okay, but if it's intolerable, um, then I'll spend some time tomorrow getting this thing all debugged and sorted out. But I mean, I'm not even talking to somebody else. There's nobody else on the stream, so I don't know how to stop that. Okay, people are saying it's tolerable. Okay. Okay. All right. We'll just keep going. All right. So they have this convention. Um, and by the way, here's the thing. When you get to convention, you oh, that's what it must be. Rumble's doing it. Here, how about now? Is that better? That probably did the trick. Sorry. Um, this is why all that Kalamazoo stuff is so stupid. It's all completely pointless. People don't understand that a precinct delegate is just a delegate to a county convention. But when you get to county convention, there's this thing called the credentials committee. And it's a thing where they have a motion at the very beginning to adopt the credentials committee. And so if people say, hey, this is not done properly, there's a vote in the room to reject the credentials committee's report. That's what your remedy for that would be, I would think. But apparently, in this case, that wouldn't even have worked because they were physically prohibited from entering into the convention. So they disavowed them, and then they said that disavowed means we no longer allow you to be on the executive committee, or that you're not allowed to be a delegate at a county convention. So anyway, this goes on, and they're laying out details in detail what the bylaws say, what the law says, and what the facts are. And so what's their count? A case of actual controversy exists within its jurisdiction. The court may declare the rights and other legal relations of an interested party seeking declaratory judgment whether or not relief is or could be sought or granted. There is an actual controversy, they say, because within the court's jurisdiction regarding whether a plaintiff is a legally recognized executive committee of the Hillsdale County Republican Party, and B, whether defendants have the authority to interfere with the admission of duly elected and recognized delegates to the November County Convention, required by Section 599. So they seek a declaratory judgment to remove that the actions of the defendants to remove the delegates were improper, not allowed under election law, nor the state party bylaws, nor the county party bylaws. The actions of defendants on August 11th, barring duly elected delegates from being seated at the Republican County Convention, were improper, not allowed under election law. The special meeting was validly noticed and held. Individuals elected as officers at the special meeting are the recognized leadership of the Hillsdale County Party, and that the chair of the meeting must call, and the chair of the Hillsdale County Republican Executive Committee must call a meeting of all the duly elected and certified delegates from Hillsdale County within 20 days after the November election to select the next executive committee and officers of the Hillsdale County Republican Party. So that's what was filed. And what ended up happening? The other side didn't show up, apparently. It was default judgments. And and then there was contempt. There was a contempt motion because the state party and the Hillsdale County Party just ignored it. Just said, hey, the law doesn't apply to us. So with that in mind, let's talk about what happened this past Saturday. And by the way, we now have the minutes of the meeting this past Saturday on January 6th, as well as an argument, which I believe is the argument that's been presented to the RNC as to why everything done in that meeting was proper. Real quick, I see some comments on here. Let's see, there's lots of people on Rumble saying, sounded fine to me, because the problem was the Rumble stream. I had to mute it. Logjam 11 says, who are these guys, MAGA or not? Who is Adam? Adam's the host. That's me. Yeah. I'd say I'm MAGA. I'd say I'm an old Ron Pauler, man. I like a lot of things about Trump. I'm probably more MAGA than Trump, honestly. But this is not a black and white world here. And what we're talking about, frankly, this business with Kristina Karamo, is a mess that's been cast by the followers of Kristina as everyone who's not a Kristina supporter is a globalist, WEF, Rhino, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, no, the problem is Kristina Karamo does not follow the rules, has not raised any money, has concocted a series of increasingly insane things to cover up for these simple failings, and is now turning serious financial problems into serious legal problems. And if you care about Trump, I argue the sooner we get rid of Kristina, the better, which fortunately was a week ago, but not quite finalized, not until this has been heard by the RNC and by the courts, and we'll see what they decide to do. On Facebook, Randy Guppy says, Sunday thoughts about current delegates. A lot of precinct delegates are standing tall and prideful on their pedestals. Their pawn-shaped credentials, pedestals are continually moving in position to be the control of the MIPF/Labadee machine, and they are oblivious to it. When I read Luke 20:46, I picture these PDs as they stand on their fancy pedestals. Yeah, it's amazing how full of ego these folks are on the grounds that they filed a piece of paper with the clerk once. And like, I am a duly elected precinct delegate. I'm a special person. It's like, yeah, you showed up. Scott Sayons on YouTube says, if the new chair can raise 20 million, then the money could be used to clean up all the KK costs. Yeah, well, there's gonna be costs. I don't know if it'll be that many. But we'll see. All right, let's now look at some things here. First off, as to the meeting that KK had on yesterday, James Show says precinct equals ran unopposed and won. That's almost always the case. Not entirely always, but almost always the case. There's so many vacancies, you file, you win. Whoop-de-doo. But the reality is they choose who runs the party. And I'm sad to say that I've seen some people I thought were great people voting very foolishly on this whole Kristina Karamo business. I think, people have been saying, this is going to go on forever. And the subject being until we relent. And no, I don't think that's the case. I think once the dust settles, once the courts and the RNC have weighed in, I think they will start to wake up out of their trances. I think it's time. It's like it was like when Todd Corser got fired. At first there were some clingers on that were like, no, Todd's a great guy. He's going to drain the Lansing swamp. But over time, they most of them turned away at the end. Matt says they do choose, so maybe talk to them like humans and try to educate instead of condescending. Well, Matt, when I talk to our precinct delegates on the phone, and by the way, we had an executive committee meeting recently, and our strategy was everybody call everybody, and everybody get everybody on the same page, and it did work for us, and it worked, and we won. We got the people we wanted elected under EC to fill a couple of vacancies. On this stream, however, I am going to be condescending because, frankly, these people need some rattling. Because they are being sucked in to this cult that's getting increasingly insane and increasingly extreme. And if not for their sake, for the sake of the people watching this, they need to understand how absolutely nuts this has gotten. The point where there was a meeting they did a meeting yesterday where, despite the fact that they are now being sued, or they're not being sued, they sued their bank, who have now filed a motion for dismissal, and then the other party filed a motion for dismissal and sanctions. They are still to this day claiming that they own that building in Lansing. Russ Jennings on Facebook says people in PDs in Jackson County have a lot of questions, but seem to be overwhelmingly supportive of the removal of KK. Good for you guys. Matt Petrie says, doesn't rallies push people farther in? Well, I'm sorry. I'm gonna call it like I see it. And if you're upset that I call them the ass roots, because I know they freak out. That's why I keep doing it. The people I'm describing, by the way, maybe it doesn't apply to the people that they think it does. I'm talking about these people who don't do anything to actually save our country. They don't knock on doors. They don't raise money or give money or recruit candidates. They scream and yell, and they attempt to hijack these county and district parties because it's the easiest thing they can do. Oh, just file a piece of paper and become a precinct delegate. Scott says, I have called several of the folks that went Saturday and logic was not a factor. Yeah, I agree. And that's the way cults operate. I had a chat, but we do need to try to convince as many as we can if there's any out there. Like, there is one member of my state committee from my district who has hesitations about Kristina, still is voting the wrong way consistently. But I mean, this is not going to get any better for them. Mindy says they think KK was sent by God. Yeah, it is a cult. Money's the root of all evil. They don't need money to win elections. Yep. And Melanie Greenfield says the people who make the most trouble do the least work. Yep. Anyway, let me get this off of my screen here. I want to show you. I've got some things from the January 6th meeting. So let's go through that. First off, the minutes of the meeting. Let me put this up on screen here. I should have gotten this ready early. Sorry. But this is kind of better than the recounting we had this past Sunday, because it's actually in writing. And they took detailed notes. Meeting was called to order at 1:59 p.m. by co-chair Melinda Pago. Invocation and prayer led by Tim Ross. Pledge of Allegiance led by Senator Jonathan Lindsay, my man. Roll call taken by Secretary Pro Tem Ann Delisle, 45 state committee members, and 26 proxies for a total of 71. Quorum was achieved. Dan Hartman made a point of order that people have proxies they have not authorized. The point of order was not germane. Yep. That's because it doesn't matter. They don't have to authorize them. And that's straight out of the bylaws. These people have no clue what the bylaws even say. Or when they do, they don't care. Item 4, adoption of the agenda. Dan Lawless moved to adopt the agenda. Motion passed by unanimous consent. Point of order was made by Dan Hartman and wanted record made and began to make a statement. His point of order was not recognized because it was a statement and not a question. Yep. Don't know your procedure either. Doesn't know law, doesn't know procedure either. Agenda item 5, issues of transparency. Lawless moved to table agenda item number 5. Now, these tablings are because they want to get right to the critical things first. They're going to bring these other things back up later. Quick clarification, by Lawless would be tabled until the end of the meeting. Voice vote taken, motion passed. So this was tabled. This was tabled. Agenda item proposed bylaw amendments. This was to lower the threshold for removing officers from 75% to 60% of the vote of members present at the meeting, which it turns out didn't matter because they got 88%, 88.8% anyway. But they did that. Co-chair realized the Secretary Pro Tem had not been voted on. Motion to appoint Ann Delisle Secretary Pro Tem. John seconded. Motion passed. Back to the item at hand. Ian motion to amend the bylaws. Hand a copy of the proposed amendment, Exhibit A. Supported by Don Beatty. Bree Mogenberg moved to make an amendment to the motion to strike any language not in the original bylaws except for changing 75%, replacing that to 60%. Seconded by Norm Schinkel. Bill Gordon moved to amend the motion to add an effective date of January 1st, 2025. There was discussion, point of information. Linda informed this was for the members section. Voice vote was taken of only state committee members on the amendment proposed by Bill Gordon to add an effective date of January 1st. Motion failed. Ian rose in support of Bree's amendment. Point of order to restate the motion. They restate the motion. Voice vote was taken of only state committee members on the amendment proposed by Bree Mogenberg. Motion passed as amended. Original motion called to a vote. Point of order. Please restate the motion. Remind the attendees that only state committee members, not proxies, may vote on this motion. Vote was held. Voice vote was held. Motion passed. A new proxy joined the meeting. Point of order was called by Dan Hartman, asking for Article C to be read into the record. Hartman was ruled out of order as it wasn't germane. The chair was informed that the bylaw amendments had to be a numerical vote. The committee voted for the bylaw amendment by standing vote. The amendment passed with 39 yeas to 5 nays. Hartman made another point of order, which was ruled out of order as it wasn't germane. I don't even know what it was. Yeah. Dan Lawless moved to table agenda item 8B, seconded by Norm Schinkel. Now we're back to tabling these things because we want to get to the good stuff, which is Agenda item 12, motion to remove Kristina Karamo as chair. There was the motion. There's an exhibit. Motion was seconded by John Rocha. Dan Lawless moved the vote be made by secret ballot. Hartman participated in discussion. Point of order called by Ian Citron that the motion to hold a secret ballot vote and Dan Hartman's comments were not germane. Lawless made a motion to restrict member comments to 90 seconds. Seconded by Bree. Maggie called the question, supported by Ann. Point of information. So there's talking about speechifying, basically. One person objected. Chair said that objection will move to vote. And then Hartman raised a point of information, questioning if the signatures to remove an officer had been received by the secretary. Co-chair Pago informed that 54 signatures had been emailed to the secretary. That co-chair Pago was copied on it, as was Chair Karamo. So documenting the evidence. Voting beginning. He says, well run. Yes, they dotted all their I's and crossed all their T's very, very carefully, because this is the kind of stuff that ends up in court someday. And it's very important to make sure you have everything meticulously documented and everything was done correctly. Emma Birch asks, why would the MI GOP General Counsel make motions and objections if it wasn't a real meeting? Good question, Emma. Yeah, he wanted to eat his cake and have it too. It's an illegal meeting, but we're going to go to the meeting and vote anyway. On Rumble, Mary Henman asks, Adam, do you know the latest on Ryan Kelly? I do not, Mary. Please inform me. I last time I heard he was in trouble, but I don't know what happened after that. Anyway, voting began by secret ballot at 3:24. Kristen Lee appointed a proxy, left the meeting. Vote was tallied aloud. The totals were announced with the results of 40 votes to remove Chairwoman Kristina Karamo, 5 votes not to remove her. Randy says he gets out on the 25th. There you go. I did not realize he was already doing time or how long it was for. On Rumble, Hitman48 says Hartman helped with the quorum. Yep. Yes, he did. Jay asks, what reasons did KK give for not recognizing this January 6th meeting as a valid? Did she ever say? Jay, yeah, the main contention that they have, that Kristina has, is that when there was a petition to request a special meeting to remove Kristina, to remove Dan Hartman, and to do the other things that were on this meeting's agenda, Kristina satisfied that by calling the meeting on the 13th. That did not have those things on the agenda. And unfortunately, according to Robert's rules on special meetings, which is what applies as the default rules of order where the bylaws are silent otherwise, it doesn't work that way. If you petition to have a meeting to debate dogs and you call a meeting to debate fish, you haven't honored the petition. That's Robert's rules. So, and that's the way these people have operated in all these other things too. They don't follow the rules. They don't understand the rules. And when the rules don't agree with what they say, they just ignore them. So that's basically what their argument was. So anyway, where were we? Kristina was removed from office. Chair stated that according to the bylaws, as the co-chair of the Michigan Republican State Committee, I am now the acting chair until another state committee elects the permanent chair. Randy says, a joke about me. No, Randy, actually, I got that from a very, very nice summary that John Rocha put together that covered the legalities, and he made the exact same point. Spicy Chemist says the state committee voted to not recognize the January 6th, and they had more state committee members. Well, unfortunately, Spicy Chemist, there's 2 problems with that. One is that the meeting yesterday was illegal, so there was no binding valid votes on anything. And number 2, that they had more state committee members also doesn't matter. So that's all there is to it. Nothing in the bylaws says that a subsequent illegal meeting that has more members is therefore more valid than the legal meeting that they chose not to show up to. So that's the problem. Is it doesn't work this in this manner of mob rule that people want. There's actually a process. There's bylaws. There's things that you have to follow. And if you don't follow the rules and you didn't do things correctly, then you're in trouble. Spicy Chemist says the meeting was illegal and void. Then you're entitled to your opinion. We've been over this multiple times now here, so I'm not going to go over this yet again. In fact, we just talked about this a moment ago. And in fact, we will look at this in more detail in a second here. So Did I say we're not going to go over this again? We are going over this again. Hartman moved to take from the table. Dan Lawless moved to take from the table agenda item 11, review and possible removal of General Counsel Dan Hartman, supported by multiple. Hartman had left the room by this time. Motion passed. Katie Glazer, motion that the state committee remove Daniel J. Hartman as general counsel. Seconded by Dan Holohan. Motion for a standing vote. Seconded. Standing vote. 39 yeses, 2 noes. And then, by the way, on Facebook, John Dunlap says, what law does it violate, making it illegal? Well, John, so John's a lawyer. He's being nitpicky here. Spicy Chemist, when he said it was illegal, he means improper. But, you know, some people don't distinguish between those two terms. It's okay. Dan Holohan motion to instruct the acting chair to remove Jim Kopus from having any role with the Michigan Republican Party, paid or unpaid, hired or advisory, now and in the future. Seconded by Hassan Nami. Point of information by Bill Gordon asking where in the bylaws permitted this. He was informed it was on page 12. Motion passed by voice vote with the abstention of one person at 341. Removal of Robert Owens passed. So there's that by voice vote. Issues of transparency. Norman Chinkle submitted the following motion. I move that the state committee goes on record saying the recent lawsuit filed by our general counsel against the Michigan Republican Trust and Comerica Bank was done without the support or authorization of the Republican State Committee. Also, that the current leaders of the Hillsdale County Republican Party, as ordered by Hillsdale County Court, was misidentified on the state party website without the authorization of the state committee. I request a roll call. Roll call vote taken, 63-2. Again, really important. Getting out of legal liability for a frivolous lawsuit. Seconded by Dan Holohan. Okay, I already read that. Issues of accountability. Kristina Karamo violated Article 3, Section M via her appointment as president of unauthorized a Nevada nonprofit, supported by multiple. And for those who don't know the details about this, because this is another thing where she just lies constantly to try to evade blame for this. On April 28th, this company in Nevada, which billed itself as we're going to be a campaign consultancy for these America First Kristina Karamo types. And they also went out in the internet and said, actually, we're going to work as helping you launder money. We will, if you want to make a tax deductible donation to this foundation, they can then give the money to us and we'll turn around and spend it on campaigns. Kristina was the founder president of this company from April 28th of this year, after she was already chair of the state party, until she resigned as of October 28th of this past year. So for 6 full months, Kristina Karamo had a conflict of interest that she said nothing about. And then she goes out and says, well, you know, I resigned, so it's fine. Well, yeah, but you were on their board for 6 months. You were their president for 6 full months. That's a conflict. Anyway. This required a 66 2/3 vote of the committee. The votes tallied were 58 yeas, 7 nays, and failed to meet the threshold of 70 votes. The motion failed. That's because they didn't have more committee members there, which is unfortunate, because it would have been good to have also raised that issue of accountability. But nonetheless, doesn't really matter because she has been removed. Maggie Kurzweil submitted the following motion. I move to instruct the acting chair to forward to the following person a notice to preserve documents. This person is an attorney. She's been on our show. A notice to preserve documents is also known as the "you're getting sued really soon" notice. To say, hey, don't delete anything. Don't destroy evidence now. You'll get in trouble. Don't do those things because you might have to produce them in discovery. And the people listed: Anna Camp, John DeLuca, Braden Giabazzi, Joseph Moss, James Kopus, Phil O'Halloran, Angela Jalisi, Joel Studebaker, Jennifer Standerfer. I hope that's not the correct spelling of her first name. Jennifer. Timothy Vetter, Jason Rogers, Samantha Strayer, Lori Skibo, Ken Byer, Ann Clark, Dan Hartman, Robert Owens, Michael Labadie, Kristina Karamo. Seconded, vote passed. Move to instruct these other people, termination, cease and desist, and those go on for a bunch of them. And then Allie motion to prepare a statement of record for today's meeting. We just read it. Send a summary of events to the Republican National Committee. Seconded. Motion passed. Motion to adjourn. Withdrawn. Oh, wait. Did we forget something? Hank Choate called a point of information asking about a state committee meeting on January 13th. Well, let's cancel that. Motion passed. Meeting canceled. 48 yeas, 3 nays. This Margaret raised a point of information asking, what notice, if any, do you recommend to the legal teams of those we are engaged in litigation with? Chair said that legal teams are consulting on it. Motion to adjourn, supported, passed. The end. Sergeant at Arms, Tom Bartz, William Lonsbury, Tom Alderson, Tellers, Bethany Wheeler, Nick Prill, Marcy Jacobson, Doug Lee, Parliamentarian, Jeff Litton. And there it is. Now, after that, they had to actually notify the RNC. So I saw some people going back and forth in the chats talking about whether or not the meeting was legal or not. I've got, let's see, where is it here? Here we go. This is the arguments. Removal of Kristina Karamo. And this is a document that's going to methodically take apart every single thing that Kristina Karamo and her supporters are saying. Number one, 33 1/3% of committee members may request a special meeting. Article 6B of the bylaws requires the chair to call a special meeting. A written request of 1/3 of the members of the committee within 15 days after such written request has been filed with the chair. Upon failure to do so, any such member can give notice 5 days before the meeting, and the notice must state the purpose of the meeting. The written request was submitted on December 2nd. It included the purpose as is required, and the purpose was transparency, accountability, unity, proposed bylaw amendment, review and possible removal of Kristina Karamo, Dan Hartman, Robert Owens, and Jim Kopis. The written request was signed by 39 committee members, 37 of whom were in good standing. The total committee membership is 107, of which 104 were seated, as there were 3 vacancies. Therefore, 37 members is more than 1/3 of the members. Mark Ashley Price says, the Michigan Republican Party State Committee does not know how to do business. Both sides of the state committee of this issue is full of crap. This is a joke, both sides. I disagree, Mark. I think one side's right and one side's wrong. I think one side follows the law and one side doesn't. Spicy Chemist says, the meeting was called within 15 days and set for the 13th. Yeah, but here's the problem. On December 13th, Karamo called a special meeting for January 13th. But Karamo refused to include the purposes that the members requested for the special meeting in writing, which prohibited the members who submitted the written request from being allowed to hold the meeting they requested. So, in fact, she did not call the special meeting requested by the members because it wasn't the meeting that they requested. Excuse me. I need to just something to drink. My throat is sore. They go through this right here. Karamo's argument. She makes a few arguments related to the special meeting, none of which are valid. First, she argues that she did within 15 days call a special meeting, which is all the bylaws require her to do. The problem is that she called a special meeting that specifically did not contain the purpose the members requested in the written request. She claims she had no duty to include that purpose, construing the meaning of calling a meeting to be only a notice or announcement of an upcoming event and not including the purpose of the meeting. This, of course, is not correct. Under the bylaws, Article 6B, and Robert's Rules of Order, number 9, special meetings, which, by the way, should I pull up Robert's Rules? Well, I was going to say, so I can pull up the bylaws. Second to last page of the state party bylaws says Robert's Rules are the default rules. Robert's Rules of Order. A call to a special meeting is the official notice of the meeting that must include its purpose. And there are 2 ways to call a meeting. The chair may call a meeting when the business of the committee requires it, and the chair must call a meeting pursuant to a written request submitted by 1/3 of the members. So Karamo was required by the bylaws and Robert's Rules to call the meeting requested by the members, which included a specific purpose. Under Karamo's interpretation, the bylaw provision allowing 1/3 of the members to request a meeting in writing would be rendered meaningless. That's an important point, too. Because if you want to argue why legalistically there's some escape route here. The problem is, but the rule would make no sense under your interpretation. Because the chair could block 1/3 of the membership from ever holding the special meeting they requested in writing. So what's the point? Exactly. Second, she also claims that the change in the meeting date from December 27th to January 6th confused members. Of course, even if some members were confused, which is questionable, that is not a reason to negate the written notice and subsequent special meeting. Finally, Karamo claims that one of the purposes of the members requested amending the bylaws was an inappropriate purpose. The members had not provided notice to the policy committee at least 30 days before the date on which the proposed amendment is to be voted on, as required by the bylaws. This is incorrect. The members provided notice by email to all the policy committee members and even the entire committee on November 4th, including Karamo herself, which is 30 days before the date on which the proposed amendment was to be voted on. So Karamo's argument is invalid. Spicy Chemist says the special meeting was called per the petition. The petition was specific to the special meeting. No, but it wasn't. That's the problem. She did not call a meeting to address her possible removal. All right, next. I'm sorry, my throat is killing me, guys. I'm going to have to cut the stream short tonight because of all that. We'll get through this document and then we'll probably wrap things up. It's not much longer. We're halfway through it already. Quorum for a special meeting is a majority of members and includes proxies. Article 6C of the bylaws. A majority of the total committed membership of the committee present in person or by proxy shall constitute a quorum. Article 3, section 1 of the bylaws allows members to provide for a proxy at a meeting, and if a member has not provided for a proxy, the district chairman, or in his absence, the remaining members present from the absent member's congressional district may select a registered voter from the congressional district to fill the vacancy for that meeting only. It does not say that the proxy has to be authorized by the absent member. It doesn't say that you can't appoint a proxy even over the objections of the absent member. You might think that makes sense. That's what the bylaws say. Compliance with bylaws. At the January 6th meeting, there were 45 members present. In addition, 4 members provided for a proxy. And finally, pursuant to Article 3, Section 1 of the bylaws, or maybe that's Section I of the bylaws, 22 additional proxies were selected from members who were not present and had not provided for a proxy. Therefore, the total number of members in person or by proxy was 71, well above the 54 needed for a quorum. As stated above, the total committee membership is 107, of which 106 were seated on January 6th. All her people had to do was show up. Karamo's argument. She makes 2 arguments related to quorum. First, although she acknowledges that proxies may be used under the bylaws to establish a quorum, she argues that Robert's rules and the practice of the committee is to have proxies submitted to the secretary of the committee to verify they are a valid proxy. Neither Robert's rules nor the bylaws require this. All proxies used to establish a quorum at January 6th meeting were valid. Second, Karamo argues that Article 6C makes an exception to the quorum requirement of a majority of the members, where, quote, the action of the committee requires a larger number of members as specially set forth in these bylaws. Karamo claims this article requires 75% of the membership to vote to remove the chair, and therefore a 75% quorum for the meeting was required. This is incorrect. While the meeting was convened, Article 5G2 required 75% of the, quote, committee present and voting, and that the vote must be made in person by such members, not by a proxy. This number can be less than 75% of the entire membership, and in fact, it was. I'm going to read a couple of chats real quick. The courts have already ruled. Ruled on what? They aren't getting involved. The majority of the state committee has ruled. No, the courts have not ruled, Spicy Chemist. I'm sorry. And again, the majority of state committee just did not rule in a meeting that was illegal because it wasn't called properly. Kristina is still in charge by 60% majority. I'm sorry, it was called properly. It was canceled properly at January 6th meeting. Kristina is still in charge by a 60% majority if you add up both meetings' voting records. It doesn't matter. It doesn't work that way. That's just not the way this works. Sorry, but if you're gonna play this game, you got to know procedure. And if your meeting is not lawfully called, it doesn't matter what you do at it. Next question. Next challenge. The committee may remove the chair at any meeting. Article 4, Section G, Paragraph 2 of the bylaws allow the chair to be removed as an officer and member of the committee upon a 60% vote of the members present and voting at any meeting of the committee. Before the meeting, the threshold was 75%. Note that the bylaws were amended to lower the threshold to 60%, which is, as they point out, the amount was 88.8%, comfortably above 60%, and even the prior threshold of 75%. Karamo argues that allowing only 37% of the total membership of the committee to remove the chair is contrary, and this is right to your point, Spicy Chemist, contrary to, quote, the letter and, more importantly, the intent of the bylaws. There is no support for this assertion. The vote to remove Karamo complied with the letter of the bylaws. Furthermore, Karamo actively engaging in attempting to decrease the number of members attending the January 6th meeting. Yeah. Yep. Spicy Chemist says, good luck convincing the delegates it wasn't the establishment trying to remove the precinct delegates' will. Thank you. I intend to. John Rocha says, I keep hearing it was secret and dirty to do the January 6th. Just because you're reading the bylaws that everyone has access to doesn't mean it was dirty. It means you failed to read the bylaws and said have them read to you. Yeah. And you know, by the way, going back to this argument, the precinct I hear this constantly from Kristina's people. The precinct delegates elected her. No, they didn't. They did not elect Kristina Karamo. The precinct delegates elected state delegates who elected her on the third ballot. She wasn't the majority choice at the state convention. So the precinct delegates, A, didn't elect her at all, ever. And B, they only elected her after the other lower vote getters were removed. So she eventually got to majority from a runoff. But I hear this all the time. The precinct delegates elected her. The precinct delegates did not elect her. And Randy says the precinct delegates gave the authority to the state committee members to do what they're doing. I think that's also pretty tenuous. I think that's quite tenuous. First off, when you elect state delegates, you don't have 100% unanimity on everything. And you send state delegates to convention to do what? Well, to do a lot of things. You had a nomination for state chair. You also had nominations for other positions, if I recall correctly. The vice chairs, all of them. How many people didn't get sent to state convention to elect Marion Sheridan co-chair or vice chair, or Hassan Nami, or Roland Maki? All of whom, by the way, support her removal, just so you know. Spicy Chemist says, bullshit, I was there. She was the preferred. Sorry, there are multiple rounds of voting. I was there too. Anyway, all right, I'm going to stop arguing with chat. This is ridiculous. Let's get back to the arguments with serious people. A petition is required to remove the chair signed by a majority of members. Article 4G. Did I read this already? Okay, yeah. So this is the bit about a petition bearing the signatures of at least 50% of the entire committee, no proxy allowed, must be filed with the secretary. Petition requesting a vote to remove the chair, signed by 54 members in good standing, was submitted to the secretary at 1:49 on January 6th. The meeting was convened at 1:59 on January 6th, and the motion to remove the chair was made approximately 2:54. The Robert's Rules of Order, which governs the conduct of all meetings, a question is brought before the committee when a motion is made at the meeting. Therefore, a properly signed petition was submitted to the secretary before the question was brought before the committee. Karamo argues that the January 6, 2024 meeting commenced 15 minutes after the email was sent, and no signature of verification was completed. As explained above, the petition was submitted to the secretary before the meeting convened, and the signatures are valid. So Karamo's argument is false. There's no signature verification requirement. Karamo attempts to argue the petition is invalid because the signatures were collected based on a December 27th meeting that was not held until the 6th, but the petition does not mention any meeting. The petition's sole purpose is to state the signatories support the removal of Karamo. The written request for the special meeting is a separate issue. Lastly, co-chair automatically becomes acting chair until a successor is elected. So Kristina's removal triggers Melinda Pago becoming the acting chair until the next chair is elected. All right, guys, my throat is killing me. So I'll answer a couple of chats and then we'll get going. I'm going to go back to Rumble because I've been looking at these YouTube and other places and not Rumble. I just look at Rumble separately. I'm looking up and away. I'm looking at Rumble. This is a common question. DMH Deplorable says, how will the Republicans in Michigan ever get anything done with all this fighting? Good question. Two things to that point. First is, this is the best time to be doing the fighting. It's January. Legislature's been out of session for the last few weeks. You know, there was the holiday break. We're still a ways from the election. The worst time to have this fight would be later. And secondly, what almost always is said when people are asking this question is, the implication is, you need to stop fighting. You need to relent. Let the other side run roughshod over you. Let Kristina bury the party even farther in debt and frivolous lawsuits and sanctions. Yeah, let's let this get to the point where she's now openly attacking Republican nominees. And that's crazy. I mean, it always is. Why can't we all just get along? Why can't we unify? Because a body can't unify with a cancer. That's why. So it's not the fight I want. It's the fight we've got. Mary Henman on Rumble says, MIGOP was being led by a Trojan horse. Yes, it was until a week ago. Smita Gansai says to someone, they won't. 2024 is a loss at this point. I'm not entirely sure about that. This is still recoverable. There's still a long ways between now and election day. Hitman 48 says, especially if KK gets her way and enables delegates to decide who is selected to be able to run for an office. Yeah, we talked about this last time, or one of the times ago. They've done a lot of streaming this week. But this proposal that they put forward, by the way, did anyone know, did that pass? If anyone in the chat knows, because I did not find that out. One of the things they tried to do at their LARPing festival yesterday was to pass a motion to eliminate the Republican primaries and have precinct delegates at conventions nominate for all of their offices. Offices like state rep, state senator, U.S. Senate, U.S. Congress, county commission, all those things. Which is only in the fevered egos of precinct delegates are they unable to see that that would be so damaging. Imagine if you're a precinct delegate going out knocking on doors and someone answered the door. Hey, Joe, to let you know, as your local precinct delegate, I'm happy to report that our state committee just passed a resolution to say, you know what? I know better than you who to vote for. So from now on, there won't be any more primary elections. I'm going to vote for you. I'll be voting on your behalf for the candidates I like at my county conventions. So good. If you want, try to tell me who I should vote for at county conventions. I'm not going to listen. So I'm a precinct delegate. I know more than you do, Joe. It's unbelievably condescending and dangerous. Randy Guppy says nothing passed. J13 was canceled. Okay, but did they in their little play acting? Did they actually pass it? Stephanie says yes, it did pass. As did the Kalamazoo issue. These people are retarded. Spicy Chemist says, I see you like Democrats voting in Republican primaries. Hey, Spicy Chemist, what's to stop a Democrat from becoming a Republican precinct delegate? Oh, that's right, nothing. They've been actually finding that fun. Can you imagine in Detroit? All these Democrats, hey, screw it, let's become Republican precinct delegates. What's to stop us? Nothing. You'd have a Democrat majority areas. You would have Democrats beating Republicans to become Republican precinct delegates. Jay Michaud says, we just need closed primaries. Yes, we do, but unfortunately that ship has sailed. I was beating that drum for years and years and years when Republicans had the majority, when they could have actually had partisan voter registration and put a stop to that stuff. But that's all too late now. Stephanie Jacobson says, I don't think a resolution was put forward in the PD thing, at least not according to the notes I received. Okay, well, we've got conflicting information here now. I don't know who's right. Stephanie with an A or Stephanie with an E, but whatever. John Rocha says, there's already a state committee woman who donated heavy for Democrats on Act Blue. Yep. There's also a U.S. Senate candidate running as a Republican who just a couple of years ago was very passionately supporting Gretchen Whitmer and all the Democrats on the ticket. She donated last September to Democrats. Yep. Randy Guppy said, a couple of my haters tried to remove me. I'm just not quite the same level as you yet. Hey, but folks, they're coming for you. I'm not kidding. County convention's coming up. You got to talk to all your precinct delegates. You got to speak the truth. That's another reason why we are forced to fight on this, because they are plotting. They are plotting to do everything they've been doing, breaking all the rules. They're going to throw out the convention rules. They're going to throw out the convention chair. They might throw out the county chair for the rest of the year if they want to. These people are hardcore Marxists. This is how they operate. As a mob, they are coming. Mindy says, I covered a Republican precinct delegate who donated a chunk of money to a Democrat running against John James. Well, there you go. Given his atrocious voting record, I'd be happy to see John James lose. I don't think I'd give his Democrat opponent any money, though. But yep. Yeah, if you think these precinct delegates are these pure-hearted MAGA patriots, I got news for you, man. They're just the same as everybody else. All right. So that's the document for tonight. And I think with that, folks, I'm going to call it a stream because my throat is killing me. I don't know if I'm just talking more loudly than I need to, but whatever it is. Oh, well, thank you guys for tuning in. And we haven't had a lot of streams this week. We may have more next week because the legislature will be back in session. So we'll see. But I'm planning on doing more email blasts. Real quick, one more time since I didn't forget. If you like this kind of content, be sure to like, share, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us, gets us more reach, and helps us fight the good fight. So thank you guys. Real quick, Penny Swan says, I love how when people lose an agreement, they call you a Democrat. Yeah, it makes me sick. Not to toot my own horn, folks, but you go to rescuemichigan.com, you go to Operation Watchdog. I have been personally chronicling the activities of the Michigan legislature all year long and blasting out all their bad votes all year long. And these people who never do anything have the nerve to call me a rhino. Fuck them. Spicy Chemist, what do I think about James Craig? Whatever, he's washed up. He is a non-factor in the U.S. Senate race, put it that way. And good riddance because of all those lockdown tickets he issued. Fabulous Fergie says, better get no, I just talked too loudly for too long. Stephanie says, I think if we had precinct caucuses to elect delegates at county conventions, not elected at open primaries, we may eventually be able to trust PDs with that power, but until they're invested, no. I think partisan voter registration would go a long way. I really think it would. And especially because in some states, you can register as a Democrat, a Republican, or an independent. And some states will allow independents to vote with either side. And some states will only allow Republicans to vote in Republican primaries, Democrats in Democrat primaries. I like that latter approach. I think that would be way, way, way better. Because Democrats would have a really hard time putting themselves down as a registered Republican. But the time for that is too late. Maybe someday when we have the House and the Senate and the governor's mansion again, we can do that. But until now, we're stuck. I really tried to make that push in like 2012 when we had Republican House, Senate, governor, and it's way too late now. So, all right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for I do for liberty. Until next time.